think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hey folks, welcome to the program. Welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being with us today. My name is Paul. I am back in the chair, if you will, and you have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. If you would like to contribute to the program today, you can do that via phone call or text message. Also, if you wanted to contribute monetarily, you can go to patreon.com/CNR and get the bonus weekly video for as little as $5 a month, or whatever donation that you want to throw our way. And it helps support us attempt to make the content that you guys get even better, even more comprehensive. So, I'm at the airport yesterday trying to get back to the good old homeland of Arkansas, and what do I see but the only inkling of ratings that CNN has left is because they're on every television screen in every airport. And so I'm sitting there, and we get to the airport to come home, and what do I see but a headline from CNN that says that Donald Trump is participating in a cover-up. Now, of course, when the story first broke, because I was watching this, they didn't actually attribute those words to Nancy Pelosi. They just had it as a header on the bottom of the screen scrolling for the airport audience, if you will, and it just said Trump participating in cover-up, and those were the words that were in quotations, but they didn't attribute it to Pelosi. So, for the untrained person that doesn't even know what the difference between, an editorial statement is and an exact quote is, or, they're thinking, wow, this must be breaking, developing news, when all it really is Nancy Pelosi saying, her opinion on the matter. And then later they corrected. Then later they added, I would say. They didn't correct, they just added, okay, it was Pelosi that's saying this, Speaker of the House. Of course, this did not go well for Nancy Pelosi. It did not go well for Chuck Schumer. The Democrat Party looking even more like obstructionists that cannot put to bed the idea that Donald Trump is secretly a KKK, KGB, Saudi Arabian agent. This is now the this geopolitical mutant of a president that we have. Again, KGB, Saudi Arabian loyalist, as well as Saudi Arabian agent. Saudis must have something on the president. And then, of course, he's a New York billionaire who is also a member of the KKK secretly. This is at least the persona that they like to put out there. So the president heard what Speaker Nancy Pelosi said. Go, Joe, this is the Mediaite clip. The president heard right before a meeting they were supposed to talk about infrastructure, which is something the president thinks that he would be very good at, and obviously is a builder, and I would imagine the answer is, I would agree with that. And here is, I don't know if that's the first one. It's the video's already queued up. So, yeah. This is the president's reaction to Nancy Pelosi right before the meeting, saying the president is engaged in a cover-up. Listen to this.
So I came here to do a meeting on infrastructure with Democrats, not really thinking they wanted to do infrastructure or anything else other than investigate. And I just saw that Nancy Pelosi, just before our meeting, made a statement that we believe that the President of the United States is engaged in a cover-up. Well, it turns out I'm the most, and I think most of you would agree to this, I'm the most transparent president probably in the history of this country. We have given, on a witch hunt, on a hoax, the whole thing with Russia was a hoax as it relates to the Trump administration and myself. It was a total horrible thing that happened to our country. It hurt us in so many ways. Despite that, we're setting records with the economy, with jobs, with the most people employed today that we've ever had in the history of our country. We have the best unemployment numbers that we've had in the history of our country. In some cases, 51 years, but generally in the history of our country. Companies are moving back in. Things are going well. And I said, let's have the meeting on infrastructure. We'll get that done easily. That's one of the easy ones. And instead of walking in happily into a meeting, I walk in to look at people that had just said that I was doing a cover-up. I don't do cover-ups. You people know that probably better than anybody. And I was just looking at a list of some of the things that we just did. More than 2,500 subpoenas qualified for. And I let everybody talk. I let the White House counsel speak for 30 hours. 30 hours. I have 19 special counsel lawyers, 40 FBI agents. I said, open it all up. Let them have whatever they want. Nearly 500 search warrants. Think of that, a search warrant. Did you ever see a search warrant before? Neither did I. This was over 500 search warrants. And of the 19 people that were heading up this investigation, or whatever you want to call it, with Bob Mueller, they were contributors to the Democrat Party, most of them, and to Hillary Clinton. They hated President Trump. They hated him with a passion. They went to her big party after the election that turned out to be a wake. Not a party, it was a wake.
Stop.
And they were very angry.
Can we, you know, all of that is true in terms of how they stacked the special counsel's staff with all these Democrats. How did they not come back and find collusion? You know what I'm saying? You tell them, and how did they? I mean, listen, I know they indicted, Manafort for tax fraud or whatever, stuff that he did before he was even a part of the Trump campaign. I mean, that was just, payback. I mean, there were certainly political hits here. They didn't come up, quote, empty-handed, but most of those indictments, they're because of the special counsel himself in the middle of, process crimes. You lied to the FBI, so I need you to take a plea from something you did 20 years ago. And it made the headlines, and people, it enabled the media to continue to trump up this delusion that Donald Trump is next because they're whittling away at his inner circle that are protecting him, and they're going to flip. And nothing happened. They couldn't get collusion. They couldn't get the president to obstruct justice, which I think is what they were trying to do. But again, how do you obstruct justice if there is no crime? How did they not? It's Washington. How did they not? I was prepared for an indictment just because. I mean, why not take the entire country down the drain and cause a constitutional crisis? Let's get this up to the Supreme Court. Why not do that? I mean, the Democrat Party is desperate to tear the country down. I mean, their supporters, the people on the far left, they certainly want to tear down longstanding institutions in this country. The Constitution itself is a problem for them. But they didn't find collusion. Isn't that incredible? Isn't that unbelievable? We have the most investigated and vetted president probably in the history of the country, especially when you consider this is the information age. I don't know of anybody else who's been put under this much scrutiny, and they couldn't find a Russia connection between Russia and the campaign of Donald Trump or Donald Trump himself or any of his. I mean, that's incredible, and yet the media won't let it go, and that's why, because they have a personal problem with this man. and not, of course, you look at the policies, you look at the record low unemployment among Hispanics, among African Americans, you look at wages going up, you look at the amount of jobs being created. I mean, they've got nothing but the new Marxism, which is class warfare, men versus women, gay versus straight, black versus white, race versus race. That's all they've got. They need to divide people so that they can assume and maintain political power. So that they can, just constantly investigate the president? Is that what this is? Their best shot at 2020 is to continue to move forward and advance a hoax? Is that really the ideas the Democrat Party has? I know they also have Medicare for All and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's socialism. By the way, there's a really good meme. Joe, I know you've already got the meme of the day picked out, and I like it, but I've got another one for you for probably Johnny Cash Friday. I think hopefully we'll get to it. Telephone number 870-275-9799. Let's get back to the president's remarks yesterday. Impromptu press conference. I think he was pretty upset that he's going into a meeting with Nancy and Chuck. Nancy says he's participating in a cover-up and then expects to negotiate with this person over infrastructure. Take a listen.
To the people that after 2 years and $40 million or $35 million, it'll end up being a lot more than that by the time all the bills are paid. This is what happened. No collusion, no obstruction, no nothing. They issued 50 orders authorizing use of pen registers. Think of that, though. 500 witnesses. And then I have Nancy Pelosi go out and say that the President of the United States engaged in a cover-up. Now, we've had a House investigation. We have Senate investigations. We have investigations like nobody's ever had before, and we did nothing wrong. They would have loved to have said we colluded. They would have loved it. These people were out to get us. The Republican Party and President Trump. They were out to get us. This was a one-sided, horrible thing. The bottom line is they said there's no collusion with Russia. You heard so much talk about phone calls that my son made to me from this meeting that was set up by GPS Fusion, it looks like, which is the other side for those that don't know. And for a year, I heard about phone calls went to a special number, unauthorized. And it would have been my son, Don, who's a good young man, who's gone through hell. And they were calls that must have been made by him before and after the meeting. 3 calls. After
this is all about to come
massive
out.
Study.
All going to come
at
out.
work, they actually found who made the calls. One was a friend of ours, a real estate developer. Great guy. Most of you know him. Nice guy. Loves our country. And the other one was the head of NASCAR. 2 of them. So of the 3 calls that were so horrible that he had a meeting and he called me, and then he had the meeting after, and he made 2 more calls. And they were written about like this little lines, couple of lines. Nobody wanted to admit it. Even last night, we had a great election. I went there on Monday.
Talking about Pennsylvania.
We had an election for Fred Keller. It was a 50-50 shot, and he won in a landslide. We went and we did a rally. Hardly mentioned today. And yet, if he lost, it would have been the biggest story in the country, even bigger than this witch hunt stuff that you guys keep writing about. So here's the bottom line. There was no collusion. There was no obstruction. We've been doing this since I've been president. And actually, the crime was committed on the other side. We'll see how that all turns out.
Stop. John Solomon of TheHill.com reports that in the next 6 or 7 days, President Trump will begin to declassify the FISA documents and everything else. And if that happens, you're going to see the media and the left begin to freak out even more than they are right now. Trump participating in a cover-up, really? He's about to release documents that are going to expose what started the whole thing. That's not Trump participating in a cover-up. That's Trump letting the American people know, hey, listen, I'm being transparent. I'm telling you what really happened. Hey, folks, tonight I'm going to be at the Gardens at Harmony in Jonesboro. Just for your information, that's where I'm going to be tonight. This is an event for State Representative Dan Sullivan, kicking off a run for Senate, going to be challenging Republican Senator John Cooper. And so, that's where I'm going to be. Probably going to be a pretty big turnout there. If, it's just a hunch that I have. There's going to be a lot of people turning out. And so if you want to go to that, I'd love to see you there. It's at 4517 East Parker Road. Republican primaries are the new general election. You got to go by voting record. You got to look at ideally, who's the more conservative of the two candidates. And, of course, I've seen this 1,000 times now. In Republican primaries, the establishment Republican will always attempt to go to the right. Will run to the right, will tell the people that he is on the right, and then continue the establishment voting ways if they are successful in convincing the voters that they really are the real deal, the actually principled conservative. When we saw this with the governor and Jan Morgan, by the way, thanks to Jan Morgan and Josh Waters for filling in for me while I was on vacation, getting a little R&R. But we saw that during the Republican primary between Jan Morgan and Asa Hutchinson. All of a sudden, Asa's ads weren't using shotguns and hunting ducks. He actually was using a sidearm, a pistol. In his ads, he came out and made a statement on constitutional carry that was carefully crafted language. It wasn't the actual definition of constitutional carry, which is now different than what the House passed in the resolution and what the Taft versus the State of Arkansas court decision revealed. And then right after the primary, he's in the middle of a general election with a Democrat, and he says that he would be open to red flag laws. Now, I want you to think about that. That's a classic example of an establishment guy running to the right during the primary, right? Because you're running against somebody who's knowledgeable and is for the Second Amendment, Jan Morgan. And then once the primary's over, Asa then comes out and says he is willing to consider or open to considering red flag laws. This is what happens now in Republican primaries in Arkansas. Because the Democrat Party is a sinking ship and, people are bailing. The ones that are left there, by the way, are even more radical, just so you know, because they're willing to just stay in a sinking ship, which means they're committed to the principles of socialism and everything else that, the Democrats are for now. But the Republican... The actual general election now are the Republican Party primaries. It's where you actually have a choice. Because the Republican Party is what the people of Arkansas have now said they agree with issue by issue for the most part. They agree with the majority of the things that a Republican stands for, which is a good thing. The problem is, do you agree with it just because it's campaign season? What happens when it's time to vote? Well, the good news is, specifically with this Sullivan-Cooper primary that's going to come, is you got two guys that are, have extensive voting records. I mean, it just is what it is. And you let the people decide. There's clearly two directions. We're going to take a break. Going to be back here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. You can find out more at conduitnews.com. Back in a minute.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All
right, welcome back, folks. This is Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell. This is Josh Waters, guest hosting, filling in for Paul today. And I want to introduce you to a special guest we have on today. His name is Kerry Cheshire. He is the Vice President for Texans for Fiscal Responsibility. And we'll just bring him on now. Kerry, good morning. Just introduce yourself, your organization, Empower Texans Group, and then we're going to talk a little about this issue of taxpayer-funded lobbyists.
Well, good morning, and thanks, Josh. My name is Kerry Cheshire. I'm the Vice President of Texans for Fiscal Responsibility. And really, we're a pro-taxpayer watchdog group that keeps tabs on the Texas legislature. You know, we find time and time again people are able to pay attention to what happens up in Washington, D.C. through Fox News, through Heritage Foundation, through a number of different...
It's a PHP parody.
Hey, man, you got any of that marble rock?
Yeah, I've got the hookup.
Thanks. I need a fix real bad. I'm itching to grow some government.
How much you need?
I'm gonna need a taxpayer's dime bag.
No problem, sir. 1 taxpayer dime of marble rock. Enjoy.
Thanks, man. They don't call it Little Rock for nothing. Am I right?
Did you know your state representative or state senator may be addicted to growing government? The drug is called marble rock, and too much of it will cause marble fever. Watch for the warning signs. Does your legislator suddenly display a lack of humility when faced with basic questions? Does he or she suddenly develop hubris and pride that was not present during the campaign for office? These are signs they might be smoking the terrible drug, marble rock. The solution? Detox. Vote for detox. Vote to send them home for their own good. Warning! Some politicians once voted out of office will not go home and stay in Little Rock to get their fix by lobbying, also known as the Burris Syndrome.
PHP parody.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, folks, coming up at 7:33 this morning, I want to introduce you to a man by the name of Raynard Jackson. Raynard is the founder and chairman of Black Americans for a Better Future. They are 5 to 7 Super PAC, and they're trying to get more Black Americans involved in the Republican Party. And so we're going to be talking. The question is this: can President Trump in the next election get the most African American votes in a generation? What do you think? 870-275-9799. So we're going to talk about that coming up. See how much time do we have left? I'm going to have to. Okay. We're going to have to talk about a few things here coming up. One of them is. Well, I'm sitting there on vacation. I tried to stay away from the headlines as much as I could, but I wanted to check in, and so I go to the Arkansas Democrat Gazette website real quick, and that was one of the things that I decided to do. So I'll go there, and on the front page I see that Asa Hutchinson III has been arrested on another DWI charge, and I just thought, I've got to be misreading this. This can't. It is. It happened again. I didn't really talk about this much the last time we were discussing this, and I'll give you all the details when we come up, but just because, you got to think, is this really, this is a political show and everything else. It's like, really, why dive into something? But there is fast arising the public safety concern of somebody who has a problem and, needs help. And at the same time, appears, at least the appearance is, that if you know the right person, have the right last name, that you're going to avoid the charges or the consequences that the average person would have if they had this many arrests for DWI.
Sources, but no one's really watching the Texas Capitol from a conservative perspective. And right here in the People's Republic of Austin, the blueberry and the tomato soup of Texas, as Governor Rick Perry always called it, there's a lot of shenanigans that happen that probably wouldn't fly in other areas of the state. And so what we do is we analyze legislation, we put out vote alerts on, House Bill 846 is one that we think is for taxpayers. Senate Bill 212 is one that we think is against taxpayers. And all the way throughout the process, we let lawmakers know what we think about legislation, and then we kind of come up with a report card at the end where every lawmaker gets a grade, 0 through 100, on how they did on tax, government, and limited government issues. As you can imagine, the lawmakers who do fairly well think that we do a good job coming up with our scorecard. The lawmakers that don't do so well and end up with scores kind of down more near the Democrats aren't real big fans of our organization. But for over 10 years, we've been providing this service to the people of Texas, to the voters of Texas, so they can be kind of have a more discerning eye on who they choose to represent them in the next election. And we found a lot of success.
Kerry, you mentioned scorecard, and I think scorecards are so important. Let me ask you this. Have there been any scorecard of the scorecards? Because there's scorecards here in Arkansas letting people know how their legislator voted, and at least one, the president of the Senate here in Arkansas did his own scorecard of scorecards, scoring the scorecards, trying to kind of diminish their impact. Has that happened in Texas yet?
It absolutely has, and it's always really funny. Each session there's some new organization that decides, we're going to issue our own scorecard and kind of rate issues ourselves. Oftentimes it's the Chamber of Commerce who's very interested in corporate welfare and funding in-state tuition for illegal immigrants, which we have here in Texas. And what they'll do is they'll kind of go through and they'll cherry-pick votes, and then they'll come out with their own scorecard and their own lawmakers on it. But if you actually go and apply those votes, oftentimes, Democrat tax-raising state representatives and state senators have even higher scores than the Republicans. So it's just farcical. We really find that, for us on our issue, people trust what we do at Texans for Fiscal Responsibility because we've been doing it the longest, and we have a lot of credibility on this issue.
Nice. Well, I think scorecards are so important, but the issue I want to talk with you about is, and I was following this, I was Michael Quinn Sullivan, I follow him on Twitter, and it was fascinating reading his Twitter feed last night as this bill was going through the Texas House. But just let's back up first and talk about this issue of taxpayer-funded lobbyists. What is that, and how does it impact taxpayers?
Well, that's a great...
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome. Good morning. Welcome back to the show. Again, telephone number 870-275-9799. Can President Trump get the most black voters in a generation? We're about to find out in the 2020 election. And there's an organization called the Black Americans for a Better Future. The founder and chairman is on the line with us, Raynard Jackson. Mr. Jackson, welcome to Conduit News this morning.
Hey, Paul. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yes, sir. It's Renard, right? Is that how you say your first name?
Yep, Raynard.
Raynard. Okay.
Yep.
So tell me, what made you want to start this organization, sir?
Oh, well, I came in, Paul. I'm from St. Louis. I'm right down the road from you guys. So I was growing up, and I graduated from Oral Roberts University studying accounting, and literally in the 80s, former Vice President Bush literally plucked me out of obscurity from St. Louis and brought me up to D.C. with him. And what was interesting, Paul, is black folks have always been conservative, but when a lot of conservatives say talk about conservatism to the black community, what we hear is Strom Thurmond, Jesse Helms. So a better way of describing the black community is traditional values. That transports us back to a time when we're sitting on grandmother's lap as a little kid, and she's telling us what's right, what's wrong, family, history, things like that. And so what I found out being at Oral Roberts University, Paul, is the things the school required of us as students, the honor code, we had to go to chapel twice a week, we had to go to church every Sunday. Those were just things I was taught growing up, so it was no transition for me. I didn't realize at the time that's what you call conservative values or being a Republican. And so most of the black friends I have all across the country to this day, Paul, believe in that. But the problem with the party and conservatism is they don't make the black community feel like they're welcome. So it's not the issues, it's the comfort level. That is the problem.
Interestingly, that's very interesting. And so what do you think? Do you think the president can get the most black voters in a generation?
Yeah, we average, Paul, 9% of the black community during that presidential election, and that's whether we do anything or not. That's the national average historically, 9%. Romney in 2012 got 6%. Trump in 2016 got 8%, so a 25% increase. With the economic news in the black community under this president, Paul, if this administration, if this party were to effectuate an effective communication strategy, we can get 15, 20% of the black vote. And mathematically, Paul, if a Republican ever gets north of 15% of the black vote during a presidential year, mathematically it is impossible for a Democrat to win a national election.
Wow. And I've heard that before. And I saw a poll. I think it was probably last year, but it was done in 2018. The first time it was done was in 2017, and the president was looking at I think 15% approval from the black community, and then it jumped to 29% a year later. I mean, those are staggering numbers. And if those hold up, then I think you're right.
Yeah, but see, I'm not a big polls reader, Paul. I don't read. I don't believe in polls. The polls I believe in is on the issue of communications. For example, if you look at all the cable talking head shows, and even on Fox, MSNBC, CNN, you have a lot of liberals, and especially black liberals, constantly calling the party conservatives, the president racist, they don't care about blacks, etc. And Paul, as you probably know, a lie that's repeated becomes the truth. We have nobody pushing back on a regular basis. I do a lot of media on my own on all the cable shows, radio programs like yours, etc. But we need to have a whole kamikaze of blacks across the country and on the state and local level pushing back against these liberal lies. But if we don't do that, Paul, I'm telling you, this president can have the best record by substance in the world, but if you keep repeating a lie, the people are going to believe the lie.
So do you think that there have been, though, I mean, there does appear to be, I mean, there's this walk-away movement that I've seen on Twitter. There is good economic news. But do you think there are more people waking up to the fact that, no, the Republican Party is not about racism. The president is not a racist.
Well, here's the problem I have with the walk-away movement, Paul. You want blacks and other folks to walk away from the Democratic Party, so they're walking away from the Democratic Party, walking into what? There's no infrastructure in place, and the National Party has no infrastructure in place to receive these people. It's almost like what's going on at the border, Paul. You got all these folks coming in, and ICE and our country are not prepared to receive all these new people. So when you say walk away, they're walking away from the Democratic Party into where the infrastructure to receive this influx of new supporters. It doesn't exist, and that's the problem I have.
I see here on the website, bafbf.org, we have the focus is getting black businessmen engaged with the Republican Party. How do you do that?
Very easy. If you come talking about lowering taxes, if you come talking about getting the government out of the way and just let us compete fair, isn't it amazing, Paul? Tiger Woods was able to come into golf and dominate, not because he was black, but because he knew what the rules were. No one placed artificial barriers in front of him. He was able to compete fairly. Isn't it amazing that the Williams sisters in tennis did the same thing? So we have a history in this country when there is fair opportunity and equal opportunity to compete. We as black folks will always excel. And so by focusing on the business community, if we can take our Republican conservative principles and explain to these business owners that, hey, we are your allies in helping you grow your revenues, so we don't have to convert them. All we have to do, Paul, is say, we welcome you into our movement. We want you involved. And the message is already there. So we don't have to convert. All we have to do is invite.
That's a great point. We're talking with Raynard Jackson. He's the founder and chairman of Black Americans for a Better Future. And again, that website is bafbf.org. A few more points on the website. I think it's a great-looking website, by the way.
Thank you.
Opportunity. Blacks are begging the Republican Party to give them a reason to vote Republican. Yep. Expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, Paul, hardly a week goes by that I don't get a call from a friend or someone who read one of my columns or went on the website, and they are saying things like, I don't have a problem voting for Republicans. I voted for Republicans for, city council, state senate, governor, and things like, especially in your state, Asa Hutchins. God, I can't even. Your governor,
Asa Hutchinson, no problem.
Your governor and Mike Huckabee, they all got north of 25% of the black vote when they were running for governor. So Arkansas is a prime example of what could be done when a governor or gubernatorial candidate just reaches out to the black community and say, hey, tell me what's important for you. Tell me what's on your mind, and I want you to be involved with what I'm doing. And so, again, you don't have to convert blacks on the message of conservatism, Paul. All we have to do is invite them and make it feel welcoming. Sort of like, remember the old days, Paul, when a new person would move into your neighborhood, they had to what they called the welcome wagon. All the other neighbors would come around and bring some food to the new neighbor and, hey, welcome, and things like that. When the party starts doing that verbally and rhetorically and welcoming the black community, you don't have to convert them on the issue. Just make them feel like you want them involved.
Interesting. So your organization, so you're engaging with black businessmen. You're all talking about the lower taxes as you're saying, hey, this is what we want to do. Also got to make them feel welcome, and also got to combat this idea of that the president's a racist. I mean, so is that in a nutshell? Did I cover everything?
Yeah. What's amazing is I did a column a couple of months ago, Paul, saying when did Donald Trump become a racist? Because I have video that I put in this column from the early '90s. Jesse Jackson in New York naming Donald Trump Man of the Year. I got video and quotes from Al Sharpton praising Donald Trump. So, and this is despite already knowing what Trump's father's legacy was with the HUD discrimination suit, et cetera, et cetera. So, at what point did Trump become a racist? When he gave Al Sharpton $50,000, he wasn't a racist. When he gave Jesse Jackson free office space on Wall Street for one of his organizations, was he a racist then? So, when did he become a racist?
That's a really good point. And you mentioned Tiger Woods earlier. He awarded Tiger Woods the Presidential Medal of Freedom for obviously the great comeback, the Masters win, and everything else. And the media, the CNN in particular, they just said, well, President's just doing this so he can attach himself to Tiger Woods, which is really, they're saying, he's trying to combat this idea that he's a racist. And they can't just let the president do something, that presidents have done, giving golfers the Medal of Freedom. before, and they just have to make it about race. They can't just let the optics speak for themselves. They always have to editorialize so that the listener knows, hey, just so you know, this is a big deal. We have a white president and a black golfer, and and it's just really frustrating. But luckily, CNN's ratings are taking a nosedive right now, Reynard.
Well, yeah, they've already been a dive, so this is nothing new. No one watches CNN, but this is why, Paul, for example, on the website, you should see the middle of next month in June. I'm having our second annual. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank today. Second Economic Summit, but also our 7th annual Black Republican Trailblazer Award luncheon. Now, Paul, this is going to be the largest gathering of minority conservative entrepreneurs in the country, and we expect a lot of folks from the administration, members of Congress, private sector entrepreneurs, and corporate executives. And now, if we were to do more programming like this, Paul, now we're on to something. I mean, can you imagine having a couple hundred entrepreneurs who are Indian, Hispanic, Black, Asian, women? I mean, this is what America is about. This is what makes America great, when someone or someones pull these folks together in one room and say, we all have a common goal, a common interest, and I, as president or as this part of this administration, what do you all need for us to do to help you get to the next level? That's what makes America great, Paul. And we're going to do this next month, and it's going to be fabulous.
Well, really appreciate it. Reynard Jackson, founder and chairman of Black Americans for a Better Future. Really appreciate what you're doing. I definitely think that the numbers don't lie. If you do get 15%, above 15% of the black vote voting for President Trump, it is very difficult mathematically for the Democrats to win the presidency. So let's work towards that goal. I think that's really, really positive. And really, I think what the larger factor here is just the ability to not group people by race at all, in terms of, because the color of my skin is X, I have to vote Y.
Right.
I think that here is really, it's almost like a freeing of the mind.
Well, exactly, and again, when the Republican Party, Paul, goes into every community, and quit listening to these darn pollsters who say, well, don't go after the black vote, it's a waste of time, they'll never vote with you. I've been in those meetings, and I've had to, let's just say, Paul, I've had to speak in tongues at some of these meetings, because I find that offensive as heck. If you believe in the message of conservatism, Paul, you should take it to the marketplace of ideas and fight like the Dickens to go into every community, because you believe your message is so far superior than what liberalism is offering folks.
Very well said. Reynard Jackson, appreciate it, sir. I'd love to talk to you again soon.
Anytime. Thanks so much.
All righty, folks. The telephone number
Bye-bye.
this morning, 870-275-9799. If you would like to contribute to the conversation, you can call or text us. Coming up on the program, while I was on vacation, a fantastic article, a commentary over at conduitforaction.org. Was it tax relief or was it a tax increase? The Department of Finance and Administration that provides details to legislators about what a bill will do. Raise money to the government? Will it put more money into the people's pockets or leave more money in the people's pockets? They trust the Department of Finance and Administration here in the state of Arkansas to give them the information about what it's going to do. But can DFNA go back and track whether or not their predictions were actually true or were they false? It's a great commentary up right now. Was it tax relief or a tax increase? DFNA may not know. What are the implications of a government agency whose sole purpose, whose a major purpose is to advise legislators? We'll give you that story coming up on Conduit News Radio this morning. Thanks so much for listening.
Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Question. Taxpayer-funded lobbying is where some governmental jurisdiction, whether that's a city, whether that's a county, whether that's a state agency, uses taxpayer dollars to hire lobbyists to lobby the Texas legislature on specific issues. And we see this as a very pervasive problem here in the Lone Star State, with over 41% of lobbyists and almost $50 million each legislative session is being spent by governmental entities, oftentimes to lobby against taxpayers. So I'll give you an example. We've got a big property tax reform bill here in Texas. Texas has probably the fourth highest property taxes in the nation. We have some of the highest rates. We just don't have some of the highest appraisals because we're a low cost of living state. And there was a big reform trying to make it to where if local governments, city governments, county governments, school boards tried to raise taxes by
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Okay, all right, welcome back to the program. All right, so let's dive into this. I'm on vacation and I see this headline here. This is let's see, now where is it? Let me get the most recent one. May 19th, son of Arkansas governor arrested on DWI charge. And the son of Governor Asa Hutchinson has been arrested on suspicion of driving while intoxicated. He was arrested. So it does say here at the very end that he was also arrested in May 2016 at a music festival in Alabama on charges of possession of a controlled substance. Records indicate he was given a pre-trial diversion in that case. Now, I've been trying to find out just how many times has Asa Hutchinson III been arrested. You would think that some of these mainstream media outlets would add it up for us. Don't you think so, Joe? Don't you think some of these mainstream media outlets would go ahead and add it up? Yeah, you think. I mean, they reference other times, but do they just add it up for us so we can know how many times this has actually happened, how many times it's actually occurred? Now we've got KRK. This is May 18th, 2019, so a day earlier. Governor Asa Hutchinson's son arrested for another DWI charge. Okay, another. But how many are we talking about here? Let's go to January 26, 2016. DWI arrest is third for Asa Hutchinson. This is the Arkansas Times. So back in January 2016, January 26, 2016, David Ramsey writes that this is the third time Governor Asa Hutchinson's son, Asa Hutchinson III, was arrested. That was in 2016. So would that make this number 4? Well, there's a YouTube video that purports to claim back on July 14th they released the video of the 4th time Asa Hutchinson III was arrested. That was what was that, in the middle of the morning? They released, or yeah, I think kind of like on the way to work or something. So that was in 2018, and then of course we have this story. Hang on one second. Throw the story up there where I guess I didn't get this one because he pled guilty to one DWI and then appealed it later. Go to the one where Arkansas governor's son appealing own guilty plea in DWI case. Now, what's the date on that? Is that earlier this year? What does it say? January 24th of this year. Okay. So, and then of course he got out of one from a technicality. The police officer, they say, didn't give him an identical copy of the original citation, and gets off on a technicality. So at some point you gotta step back and we gotta say, okay, all right. This is something that is, for any family, is you gotta be like, oh my gosh, okay. You hate to see anything like this occur, right? And my point is I haven't really talked about this very much, very little. I referenced the last time, where it appeared that they were trying to use the same technicality from a previous case to get off this. And listen, when you are the son of somebody who's the highest office in the state of Arkansas, it's going to invite this kind of scrutiny. It's going to happen. All right. But just throw all of that out. I mean, whether you're a governor's son or whether you're just anybody, if this has happened this many times, and the reason that we have driving while intoxicated laws on the books are to protect the public, first and foremost, and to protect the driver because it's dangerous, right? We're now getting into a territory where is there a difference between special treatment because of what your last name is versus just having access to good attorneys that know how to, get you out of these tight situations? There's a balance there, I suppose. But at some point, there is a problem here that must be recognized and needs to be dealt with, number one. But number two, if the problem is not dealt with, somebody doesn't get help, then it doesn't. The state steps in because they're like, okay, people's lives are being put at risk here. You can't drive drunk. It's a danger to other people. It's a danger to your fellow man. So just this is where the law is supposed to step in and say no driver's license. This is where the law is supposed to step in and says, okay, you know what? If you do want to drive, you're going to have one of those breathalyzer thingies in your car. You know what I'm saying? I mean, something to try to, keep the public safe. Just a thought. And how many is this? Is this number 5? If the arrest was number 4, if the YouTube video title is accurate, and it's number 4, then this would be number 5. So, something to think about. Folks, when we come back, let's talk about the Department of Finance and Administration, shall we? I think that's definitely something that we should do. Also, our sympathies, our thoughts, and our prayers, yes, they do work. Prayers do work, are with our fellow countrymen in Missouri. Deadly tornadoes striking Jefferson City, the state's capital. According to the Associated Press, 3 deaths reported so far. And we'll see. There are some people trapped in homes. violent tornado ripping through the state of Missouri's capital. So our thoughts and prayers are with them. People saying very chaotic situation down there. We'll be back in just a moment.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
More than 2.5% a year, that would trigger an automatic vote of the people, so that the people would have an opportunity to say, yes, tax us more, or, you know what, make do with what you got. And just a legion of lobbyists descended on the Capitol and actually killed that legislation last session. I don't think they're going to be successful this time. It looks like we are going to get it across the finish line. But time and time again, taxpayers are coming down. You know, you're driving in 2 hours, 3 hours. For some Texans, it might be even 12 hours to come to the Texas Capitol and make your voice heard. Meanwhile, your tax dollars are already being spent here within the halls of the Capitol to wine and dine legislators to vote against your interests. We just think that compelled speech is an absolute scourge. It's the antithesis of of the Republican government that our founding fathers gave us, and it's something that needs to end here in Texas.
Yeah, that last point, man. That's really good. Compelled speech, because that's what it is. You know, money is speech, and taxes are not voluntary, as everyone knows, and they are then using the taxes from the taxpayers to compel speech that, in this instance, goes directly against the taxpayers' own interest. And you say almost $50 million, and half of the lobbyists are getting some kind of government check to lobby for. And these are what, cities and counties, school districts? Is that typically the entities that are pushing it?
You know, it's predominantly cities, counties, school districts, but I don't know exactly y'all's format of government up in Arkansas, but we've got emergency services districts, municipal utility districts, community college district, healthcare district, all kinds of governmental agencies. And then, of course, the actual governmental agencies themselves. I mean, the Texas Alcohol and Beverage Commission has registered lobbyists that are using taxpayer dollars to fight against regulatory changes and other things. And the kind of common pushback, actually 91% of Texans think that taxpayer-funded lobbying needs to be completely abolished.
Wow.
But there's some people that push back and say, well, don't you think that there might be a good public policy decision? And, maybe there is. But the problem is, I'm a taxpayer here in the city of Austin. And the legislative agenda for the city of Austin, which is advocated for on a $950,000 a year contract, both in Austin and in Washington, D.C., is to advocate for gun control, is to advocate for taxpayer funding for Planned Parenthood. Now, I don't support any of that as a fiscal conservative, as a true conservative, but some of my neighbors absolutely support those things. But just as I shouldn't be forced to subsidize this, I wouldn't expect them to be subsidizing a pro-life message or a pro-gun message. Government should be out of the business of compelling speech of private individuals. If I want to donate to a pro-life or pro-gun or pro-taxpayer cause, I'm free to do that. But the government shouldn't furnish my opposition.
Well said, yeah. In Arkansas, the way we're seeing it is mostly cities, like our Municipal League, Association of Counties, and then school districts. So, Carrie, this session, there was actually a bill filed, and it was one little piece, basically teacher administrator groups. You couldn't use taxpayer money in these teacher administrator groups to hire lobbyists. And Carrie, you would have thought that they wanted to drag people out in the street and flog them. That was the response that came at this bill, the negative response. And that thing died quickly in a House committee this session. So that's kind of background where we're at in Arkansas. It's not bubbling up as much as it is there, but it sounds like Texas strongly against it, 91%. So update us on the bill this session, how that's played out, and I know yesterday was a really big day for the bill.
That's right. So Texans have been fighting for probably about 10 years to abolish the practice of taxpayer-funded lobbying. Basically, as soon as people started figuring out, how much money was being spent, how effective these lobbyists were being in fighting against taxpayers, but haven't found any success. This session, however, the Texas Senate, which is our most conservative chamber in the Texas legislature, passed out a ban on taxpayer-funded lobbying on a party line vote of 1912, kicked it over to the Texas House. In the Texas House, it was watered down in committee to apply only to 4 areas of, saying that these taxpayer-funded lobbyists couldn't advocate on issues of tax policy, on issues.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us today. The telephone number is 870-275-9799. If you would like to contribute to the conversation, you can do that. We've got our meme of the day coming up. We're going to be doing that here in about, what do you say, Joe, 50 minutes or so? So towards the top of the next hour, we always we're reserving this segment for. Anyway, I like this one. This particular meme of the day. It's pretty good. Yeah. We have. Was it tax relief or a tax increase? Department of Finance Administration may not know. Listen to this. This is incredible. I thought this was great. Now, this is also up over at conduitnews.com as well. When tax legislation is proposed, the Arkansas legislature turns to the executive branch to get an estimate of how much additional tax money will be collected or how much will be lost through tax relief. Now, think about that for a second. There is, just based on that function right there, there's a level of trust that has to take place between the legislative branch here in the state of Arkansas and the executive branch. There's a piece of legislation that's written. The Department of Administration comes in and they either say what the committee wants to hear or they tell the committee, no, this wouldn't work. And a lot of times that has a lot of sway in what they do. Now, this was kind of brought to a head when Senator Jonathan Dismang in the last session essentially took Department of Finance Administration to task for just being a capricious organization in terms of they just make the numbers say whatever they want them to say for political reasons. That was the underlying accusation, was that this is you guys are not just giving us the numbers and figures. Here they are, 2 + 2 = 4. You're actually twisting things for political reasons, for bureaucratic reasons, and not just being this agency that needs to build this trust between legislators and reps and senators. So the question is, if the Department of Finance Administration has all of this power, all this say, is there a way for you to go back and compare, let's say, their revenue impact statements when it comes to a proposed bill? Is it going to leave more money in the people's pockets, or is it going to take more money out of the people's pockets? Is there a way to somehow create a scorecard? Tell us what the score is. Did you get right? Did you get within did you get within 1% of your projection, 2% of your projection? Is there a way to know how reliable your estimates are that the people's representatives have trusted to vote for or against, to pass laws, to pass big laws sometimes? It's an obvious question to ask. The estimates are provided by the Department of Finance Administration. These revenue impact statements are extremely important. Yet, in many instances, the Department of Finance and Administration may not have a clue whether their revenue estimates are accurate or wildly inaccurate. In general, DFNA has a good reputation for its work. But when it comes to revenue impact statements, sometimes DFNA's estimates may be a little more than flim-flam. Whether accurate or wildly inaccurate, DFNA's revenue impact statements influence whether legislators vote for or against a bill. As an example, now this is good. Let's take Act 141 of 2017, which was touted as a military tax relief bill. The act gave income tax relief to military retirees, but other veterans were left out. The legislation also included several tax increases. You've heard me talk about this before. Soft drinks, candy, digital downloads such as movies and books. It made unemployment compensation taxable as income under Arkansas income tax. The legislation was touted as a revenue-neutral bill, meaning we're going to lower taxes on veterans who are in the retirement program, but we're going to raise taxes on candy and soda, digital downloads, and it's going to be revenue-neutral, meaning the tax increase was supposed to offset. Okay? So even if it was revenue-neutral, by the way, you've got taxpayers who are declared winners by the government and others are declared losers. But anyway, it's now been 2 years since they passed this. So let's find out whether DFNA's revenue impact statement was true. Was it accurate? Was the estimate of the cost of the tax relief accurate? How accurate was the estimate of the new taxes? Was the overall bill revenue neutral, or was it a tax increase? Under the Freedom of Information Act, the Department of Finance Administration was asked to provide, number one, all records showing the tax revenue increase received under Act 141 of 2017, a law that increased the taxes on soda, candy, and digital products. Number two, all records showing the tax revenue reduced for military retirement income under Act 141 of 2017, a law that exempted income tax for military retirees. Mr. Scott Hardin, spokesperson / communications director for the Department of Finance and Administration, replied, quote, "Regarding your first request, we can provide the general revenue reports, but gross receipt taxes are submitted by total sold by applicable vendors, and the department does not have details regarding the specific items sold. We can certainly provide the fiscal impact statements, including our previous projections, but the existing records of the department do not track what the separate invoices are each month." In other words, DFNA is saying they don't know how much tax money they collected from these increases. That's pretty powerful information that they don't know how to police them. I mean, were you right or wrong? You'd think you would want to know. You'd think you'd want to know if you were wrong, especially so you can maybe figure out, well, why were we wrong? Maybe we've got our formula backwards, or maybe we need to tweak something the next time we provide an estimate to a standing committee. Regarding the second request, Mr. Hardin replied, quote, "The Arkansas Department of Finance and Administration does not have responsive records that reflect the amount of tax that was not realized because of the exemption. Additionally, there are no calculations or reports that would provide this number." Turns out DFNA has no idea how Act 141 of 2017 changed tax collections, and DFNA has no way of finding out. This means there is no way of judging whether DFNA's revenue impact statements had any merit at all. Were they accurate? Were they inaccurate? Were they true? Were they false? And there's no way for DFNA to know whether its subscriptions to computerized economic models provide useful estimates or just the basis for flim-flam? Again, is the organization becoming just more political? Is it becoming just a formality? Is it becoming just a way to get legislators to have something to fall back on? Well, DFNA said so, so I did it. Politicians are happy to do that, a lot of them, because it provides the cover necessary to shift the blame in case DFNA's wrong. But how are we going to know how are we going to ever know that they're wrong if we can't fact check their numbers? Arkansas legislators have come to rely on the revenue impact statements provided by the executive branch, which is DFNA. We doubt many legislators realize that sometimes these numbers have no basis in fact. What will legislators do to ensure they have the best estimates possible and enough information to determine whether the estimates are reasonably accurate or just wild guesses? Now, the DFNA, obviously, they would be wild guesses. We're accountants. We went to school for this. We're not giving you wild guesses. Well, I would recommend that somebody at DFNA starts to use your education and figure out how you can fact check yourselves. I mean, you should want to do better. So you should want to know, was that revenue impact statement that we gave to a committee of the Republic of the State of Arkansas, the people's reps, that they went in and then they passed laws that say how much I have to pay or how much the rest of us have to pay, were they accurate or were they flim-flam? And if they were accurate, great. By the way, if they were accurate, I for some reason I think we'd have article after article in the mainstream media about how accurate they were, if they could actually prove it. If they were inaccurate, though, maybe you go back to the drawing board and you figure out how to give better estimates. Like, I know we're talking about government estimates, and we all know that they're wrong, but a lot of the time, I get that. But the fact that you can't even attempt to find the documents that will show whether or not it was revenue neutral or not is pretty frustrating. The commentary ends, if you were on the House or Senate Committee on Revenue and Taxation, wouldn't you be asking DFNA serious questions like, what types of tax changes can DFNA accurately track with hard data, and what types of tax changes are hard to predict? What is DFNA's methodology where there is no hard data? Is the economic software used by the Department of Finance and Administration the most accurate available for predicting revenue impact? And what systems are used in other states? Based on the type of tax change, what is the margin of error in revenue impact statements? They should be able to tell you that. If you're at the end of the table addressing the committee, you should be able to answer, well, our margin of error is this. I mean, just get it. What reasonable measures can be undertaken by DFNA to track more actual results? What other sources are available to allow legislators to get a second opinion on revenue impacts? Interestingly, this is a fantastic article because it raises questions, especially in the wake of the 92nd General Assembly, where we saw the Department of Finance and Administration, specifically on tax policy or any other thing, like, if it was going to have any revenue impact at all that was negative, that was actually going to leave more money in the pockets of the people, DFNA is determined that there has to be some offset somewhere else. And that's because the administration itself doesn't believe in net tax decreases. They believe in everything balancing it out, revenue neutral. But in the wake of the 92nd General Assembly, these are great questions that really, I think the questions themselves highlight a reform that is needed. The reforms that are needed in how we spend the people's money. That's really what we're talking about here. How do we spend the people's money? Well, first you're going to project, you're going to predict things. How do you take the people's money? And here's another thought for you. Let's say that this is the best we can do. Seriously. Let's say that this is the best we can do. What if the status quo with DFNA and their estimates, this is the best we can do? If that's the case, then this is a level of dysfunction that just government can't do better when it comes to their estimates. That would then, in my opinion, dictate that government needs to be as small in scope and focus as it possibly can, because we're just simply going to admit that they just can't track taxpayer money the way that you would be able to if you're a business owner, by the way. It's preposterous, but I'm just saying, if it's the best we can do, well, then government needs to be much smaller than it is, because we shouldn't put up with this type of flim-flam, as the article says. Folks, it's up right now at conduitnews.com. You go check it out, share it with your friends. That's conduitnews.com. We're going to take a break. We're going to reset and be back here in just a moment.
The bonds and a few others, but it was really a very, very weak and watered-down bill. The bill came to the floor, and then they exempted school districts from it as well. So it would have really only applied to cities and counties. But once they exempted school districts, and they also exempted healthcare districts, I mean, you're talking about exempting over 65% of the state budget spending from the taxpayer-funded lobbying bill. And then very quickly, liberal Republican lawmakers joined with Democrats to tack on amendments saying that the legislation didn't even apply in a county of a population of 250,000 or less, or the cities therein. And just to give you some perspective, Texas has 254 counties. With that amendment, the taxpayer-funded lobbying kind of watered-down ban that didn't really do anything would have only applied to about 200 to about 21 to the 200.
This is for all you big government establishment Republicans out there. Hope you're listening. I keep a close watch on these votes of mine. I keep my finger in the wind all the time. I vote big government, and you will pay with your dime. 'Cause every time I toe the line. You know, there's always an excuse not to shrink government. It's much easier just to toe that line. I find it very easy to be rhino blue. I find I'm not alone when failing to come through. Yes, big government, I'm a fool for you. 'Cause every time I toe that line. Legislative sleight of hand would be an accurate description. Or you could just say, they can't quit towing that party line. As sure as night is dark and day is light, I'll vote big government both day and night. And act like I'm shocked when it all comes to light. 'Cause every time I toe the line. You know, the phrase toe the line is the equivalent of toe the mark, both of which mean to conform to a rule or standard. You could also call it the status quo. Tax and spend, I'm always on your side. I love writing government checks that I cannot hide. Buying people's votes always turns the tide. 'Cause every time I toe the line. The Oxford Dictionary Word Histories. The idiom toe the line, from an athletics analogy, originated in the early 19th century. I hope you don't watch these votes of mine. Hope you don't see through the lies and slime. 'Cause I plan on spending with your dime. 'Cause every time I toe the line. You know, towing the line is what the folks down in Little Rock call progress.
PHP Parody.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Here's a question. Hang on one second. How does the Department of Finance Administration come up with an estimate on any particular tax change in the first place? Would they not have to have a baseline? If so, where did they get that number to start with? And if you have a baseline, why can't you then get the real impact by using the same method, but, in hindsight? If DFNA is not going to give up, if DFNA says they can't give you the numbers, like they can't go back and say, well, this is what we predicted and this is what the actual truth is, if they can't do that, I think that's a little unbelievable for some. It may be the fact that DFNA doesn't want to admit that their revenue impact statements were wildly inaccurate. And if that's the case, well, then that's then a political position. Shielding the administration or whatever. I mean, why should the Department of Finance and Administration be able to take a position for or against the bill on anything? It's one thing to give the numbers. Well, this is what the numbers are. And we're here testifying against the bill on behalf of the governor or behalf of DFNA. We're here to be against this bill. What is any of their business? Why do they get to be for or against the bill at all? DFNA, as a taxpayer-funded organization, why do they get to go down and be like, we're against the piece of legislation? That should have nothing. They shouldn't be advocates at all for or against. I mean, let somebody, from the governor's personal staff, I guess, would be better. But DFNA, which is supposed to be some sort of, or at least, I mean, maybe we should just admit that they're not. They're not a neutral arbiter of facts and numbers when they go down to the end of the table and they kill a piece of legislation or they support a piece of legislation or they write a piece of legislation, turn it over to a legislator like I believe Lanny Fight, and then Lanny Fight figures out what they're doing and decides to make the legislation better. And then all of a sudden DFNA opposes their own legislation. Remember when that happened? Oh, yeah, that was fun. And again, kudos to Senator Jonathan Dismang for calling DFNA out on that debacle. It's exactly what it was. You got to wonder at what point does the legislate? I know. Listen, it's 2 years. 2 years from now, 2021, there'll be another legislative session, and you got to wonder at what point does the legislature have enough of the status quo and start to institute real institutional reforms, like recording all committee votes, things like that, like not just taking DFNA's word like it's gospel. At what point does that happen? Let me tell you what I'm worried. I mean, everybody can be upset right now, but there's a two-year cooling off period. There's a presidential election. There's a lot of people that are going to forget. They're going to forget what just happened, or the tendency of government, tendency of these bureaucracies. And 2021 rolls around, and does everything just start over like everything's fine, nothing to see here? I don't know. 870-275-9799. Again, we have a report. Let me get an update on what's going on in Jefferson City. Our countrymen to the north, with the Associated Press, 3 deaths in Missouri as a tornado strikes the state capital. They say that it's just been devastating. And I was out of the state on vacation, and I know the state. You guys back home were just getting pummeled with severe severe, storm and line after line after line. So just be careful, be safe. Just watch the weather, and whatever you do, don't listen to Democrats that are going to tell you that if you drive less, there would be less tornadoes. Don't listen to them. Weather's always been a problem. It's always been a thing that changes. 870-275-9799 is the telephone number, and we'll be back here in just a moment.
County. And then even with that complete watering down and the complete joke of the bill, liberal Republicans joined with Democrats to scuttle it. It only ended up getting about 60 votes at the end of the day out of our 150-member Texas House. So it's a very frustrating defeat for taxpayers, but the enlightening thing is that now we know where lawmakers stand. If it's killed in a back alley or a closed-door committee room and we don't exactly know who's for it and against it, now Texas taxpayers have a clear idea of who is for ending taxpayer-funded lobbying and who thinks that it ought to continue, who's siding with the taxpayers and who's siding with the lobbyists. And they're going to have a great opportunity to make their voice known in March 3rd, 2020, when we have our next election.
Nice. And that's, sometimes that's the way the process works out. My experience has been in Arkansas that legislators do not want to go on the record if they don't have to. And it sounds like there's no wiggle room anymore on that issue in Texas. They have taken a stand in the House and Senate there, and now people have a choice. If you say 91% of Texans oppose taxpayer-funded lobbyists, and then these folks down there voted against it or did maneuvers to water it down and kill it, I don't like their chances next election cycle.
Yeah, it's not looking too good for them on that issue, or honestly a myriad of other issues. People actually, look at Congress and they think that it's, a great example of dysfunction. It's true, it is. But here in the Texas legislature, right under their own nose, lawmakers are preparing to grow the size of the state budget by 16%. That's double the rate of population and inflation here in the Lone Star State. So you're growing twice the rate of the economy and taxpayers' ability to pay. And you're looking time and time again, positive conservative regulation changes and issues like this ban on taxpayer-funded lobbying are being waylaid in the Texas legislature. And I don't think conservatives, I don't think taxpayers, I don't think Texans are going to be very excited when this legislature concludes next week. And I think they will make their voice heard in the upcoming election. And I think we will see a grand upheaval in the lawmakers that we have who are not interested in standing up for taxpayers.
Kerry, one thing that I saw on social media was that, I don't know what group it was, it might have been and correct me if I'm wrong, but the State Republican Party of Texas supported this bill, and then it failed, and y'all have majority Republican state like Arkansas, and we're seeing that here in Arkansas. You have platform issues that are failing in Arkansas with supermajority Republican.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. 870-275-9799. I guess we talked to Renard Jackson an hour ago. Renard Jackson, the founder and chairman of Black Americans for a Better Future. It's a 527 super PAC. They're trying to get more blacks involved in the Republican Party. And this statistic is clear. You get 15, 16, 17% of the black vote in the 2020. If Republicans get that voting for Trump, it's going to be very difficult for them to it's going to be difficult for the Democrats to win the nomination. Throw the board up there, or the graphic up there for today. or for this week. I've been out most of the week, so it's a short week for me. Free press versus the media. Mark Levin has this book out, Unfreedom of the Press. They say it's absolutely fantastic. I haven't gotten it yet, but I definitely want to read it. I know he's been interviewing folks, and he's been talking about it on his show, on his multiple shows, on multiple platforms. The free press versus the media. I know y'all have probably not talked about this, Joe, you and Josh, and I know, thanks to Josh and Jan Morgan for filling in for me the last 3 days. But, the establishment media types think that you need to have a license. They have pushed this before, that bloggers and everything else, they don't need to be treated like, let's say, Chuck Todd at MSNBC or whatever. They don't. You need to go through some sort of some federal program to get a license to be a member of the media. You're going to see this more and more. You're going to see this pushed more and more, especially in the 2020 election, especially if they lose again. And the reason is because they believe that people are voting based on information that is fake, that is untrue, which is hilarious because they're the mainstream media and they are the king of telling people things that are not true or leaving out relevant information that completely reshapes the story itself. So we are in, a figurative battle here when it comes to this news source or that news source. And then, of course, you've got Facebook that's got all this power, and they're censoring conservatives, and they're trying to, by the way, our meme of the day, speaking of censoring conservatives, our meme of the day coming up later on in the program. We're definitely going to get to that. But yeah, the free press versus the media. I think that's definitely good for the week. The rest of the week. Tomorrow's Johnny Cash Friday, by the way. So we talked with Raynard Jackson. Tomorrow on the program, I want to introduce you to a guy by the name of Brandon Straka. Brandon is from the Walkaway movement, the founder of the Walkaway campaign, trying to get people in general to just walk away from the Democrat Party when they see the hypocrisy, when they see the truth behind what it is that they're actually doing. What the Democrat Party historically stands for, what the Democrat Party still stands for. The telephone number again, 870-275-9799. So, in the last legislative session, we saw the income tax cut. We also saw a gas tax increase. We saw the half-cent sales tax increase that's going to go on the ballot, that they're going to try desperately to get people to vote for highways. We saw tax increases on your cell phone bills to try to fund 911 services, water bills. It was just incredible, and I'm sure I'm leaving something out right now. So that's what's happening at the state level. What's happening at the local level? Well, during the legislative session, we saw Fort Smith, the city of Fort Smith, voting down what was a proposed tax increase to fund what was always supposed to be a private endeavor, which is the United States Marshall Museum in Fort Smith. And we had several guests on to talk about that and to talk about some potential use of legal graft that was going on. A lot of the property owners around that museum wanted it built up around the project because they wanted their property values to skyrocket so that they can then, make a buck off of taking money from using the government to force people to pay the tax so they build a building so that your property is now worth more money. I mean, that's exactly what in the book, the Jay Cost book. Where's that Jay Cost book, Joe? Is it in the other room? What's it? A Republic No More? Yeah, A Republic No More. You know what? In the context of what we're going to do, I didn't plan to do this, but in the context of what we're going to do, you always got to read this. You got to read this like once every quarter or something. It's insane. You get to political corruption is incompatible with a Republican form of government. Wow. That's the first line, introduction. Political corruption is incompatible with a republican form of government. A republic strives above all else to govern for the public interests. Corruption, on the other hand, occurs when government agents sacrifice the interests of everybody for the sake of a few. Corruption can take many forms, as we shall see. It can be patronage. It can be intentionally lax regulatory oversight. It can be tax laws written to favor special interests. Corruption can benefit just one person, a small group, a large minority, or maybe even a majority, just as long as those interests are incompatible with those of the public at large. Okay? So listen, this is the best part when it talks about legal graft here. Hang on one second. Let's see here. Did I miss it? Yeah, here it is. I missed it. It's in the preface of the book. So you get George Washington Plunkett. That's right. George Washington Plunkett was a boss of the New York City's Tammany Hall about a century ago. Quote, "Everybody's talking these days about Tammany men growing rich on graft, but nobody thinks of drawing the distinction between honest graft and dishonest graft. There's all the difference in the world between the two. I've not gone in for dishonest graft, blackmail and gamblers, saloon keepers, disorderly people, and neither has any of the men who've made it big in politics. Who've made big fortunes in politics. There's an honest graft, and I'm an example of how it works. I might sum up the whole thing by saying, I seen my opportunities and I took them. Just let me explain by examples. My party's in power, you see." I added that part. My party's in power in the city, and it's going to undertake a lot of public improvements. Well, I'm tipped off, you see. Say that they're going to lay out a new park at a certain place. I see my opportunity and I take it. I go to that place and I buy up all the land I can in the neighborhood. Then the board of this or that makes its plan public, and there's a rush to get my land, which nobody cared particular for before." Okay, so we see what's going on there, right? Now notice in the context of Fort Smith, we interviewed several people that said, not only are they trying to raise this tax, and we can't afford it because we're taxed enough already, but they're also, all these property owners are going to end up making a bunch of money off of this sales tax increase because they're going to use it to build this facility, and then people are going to come in and sell the property that they've all bought up around it. Honest graft, people. Honest graft. Now, we're going to take a break from the Fort Smith situation, which happened during the legislative session when we had all these tax increases that were being floated about. And the people of Fort Smith saying we're taxed enough already, we're not going to raise our sales tax. Now let's go to a current issue, and let's go all the way across to the eastern part of the state in the city of Jonesboro, where they are now proposing a 1% sales tax to build. They're going to say they're saying for safety and amenities. Now I've been here before. I was here 10 years ago. I was covering this issue 10 years ago when they said this was, we had to raise it a half cent for public safety. And it was police and fire. And it ended up, if you go look at the books, it was all a giant shell game. They were trying to raise money here so they can immediately, but they highlighted that it was the police and firemen that were going. I mean, I was here 10 years ago. I got a long memory. I know what you guys are trying to do. You're just trying to grow government. And this time you want to have a water park. Apparently that's what this is. Talk Business and Politics reports that a grassroots organization known as Team Jonesboro has formed with the intention of passing a sales tax hike that the group hopes will improve the safety and standard of living in Northeast Arkansas. Number one, if they have a sales tax increase, there will be an election. And that election will be in the month of September. September 10th, I think, is what they're shooting for. So we will yet again have a special election, which is a dishonest attempt to get what you want by, admittedly, statistically, it is overwhelmingly true that when you have a special election, there's less voter turnout. Now, why would a group that is for Team Jonesboro not want the most accurate sampling size to try to get the consent of the governed that they possibly can get by holding it in a general election or even a primary where people actually turn out and vote. And the only answer you can come to, I mean, let's take the tax aside, whether you're going to be for sales in any instance. If the people are voting on it, it needs to be where you know statistically you're going to get the biggest section of the population, so you know if they actually want to pay the money or not. And to suggest otherwise, and to try to make an excuse, you're just trying to excuse theft. You're trying to excuse theft if you do this. Special elections, you can go to the Arkansas Center for Research and Economics on the campus of UCA. They have extensive data that backs this up, that when you have a tax increase proposal on the ballot during the special election, your chances are astronomically high that you're going to get what you want. And when you have a special election that's on the ballot, during a general election, the people tend, not always, but the people tend to vote it down. Now, when you have a tax increase that's voted on by the people in a general election, you can rest assured, pat yourself on the back, wow, the people really want to pay more money for whatever the cause is. Anyway, talk business and politics. Quote, this is something that's long overdue in Jonesboro. If we're going to keep our brightest minds and local talent here, we must prioritize public safety and make real tangible investments in quality of life in Jonesboro. That's according to the chair, Scott McDaniel. Okay, quality of life. So the sales tax increase Jonesboro, or a committee is proposing, would be used to fund investments in public safety and construct public amenities such as parks, aquatic centers, a shooting sports complex, arts and entertainment venues, museum. It belongs in a museum, sidewalks, trail systems, and a wide variety of other quality of life-based projects. Quality of life tax. It's a quality of life tax. What is this, Monopoly? Come on, guys. And I'm sure... I mean, how many of you guys have studied tax policy beyond you raise a tax and you get to fund what you want to fund? I'm just curious. I mean, I've been doing conservative talk radio now. This is my 10th year, and I've studied tax policy. I know I'm not going to claim to be an expert on it, but I know it goes a lot further than just, well, you raise a tax, we take the money, and we get to spend it on what we want to spend it on. It's a lot more complicated than that, especially when you look at the fact that Arkansas combined local and state sales tax. We're one of the highest tax states in the entire country. We have one of the lowest median incomes, and yet we're one of the high. We're the 17th, according to USA Today, we're the 17th worst place to live when it comes to higher taxes. When you look at all the different ways that Arkansas is taxed, and we're 44th in median income. Now, you don't think those two numbers are related? Because they are. We're giving the government too much of our money at all levels. Now, if you ask me to support a tax, I would much rather support a local tax because it's closer to be monitored by the people than I would a state tax. But some of these people in Fort Smith and other places, you want to know why you can't get your tax increase passed? It's because people are looking down a Little Rock and they're raising taxes left and right. And if you're going to be raising taxes at the state level and then raising taxes at the local level, the people are going to push back and tell you to figure out some other way to build your aquatic centers. Now, I mean, during this time where we have Northeast Arkansas potentially doing a special election for this tax, I do have to, give my tip of the hat to James Sturch, Senator James Sturch, because if it wasn't for him when he was in the House, they would have passed special election reform and they would have eliminated. You wouldn't even be allowed to do this unless it was an emergency, to have a quality of life investment tax or whatever it is this is. You wouldn't even be allowed to do it. Unless it was a significant emergency. You'd have to wait to a general election or a primary where people are actually engaged. People are out taking care of their families. They're trying to put food on their table, and they can't keep up with every media outlet that's saying, oh, we got a new special election. Special elections are supposed to be for emergencies, not so you can tax the people more. It's just, and this is happening all over the state. And you know what? There's a lot of these special elections where people are mobilizing and they're getting the word out to try to defeat this stuff. But a 1% sales tax, good grief, that's a lot of money. Let's go to KAIT, which is the ABC affiliate. Northeast Arkansas. Group officially pitches sales tax proposal. I just want to make sure you know that they're the ones that actually mention when the special election would be. A group called Team Jonesboro announced their plans Monday to make Jonesboro a safer and stronger community, asking for a sales tax increase to fund projects around the city. You know, that headline, safer and stronger community, that'll work great with the progressive crowd, but man, you guys should have messaged that better if you're going to get. I mean, Craighead County voted for Ted Cruz. Just letting you guys know that. In a news release, the organization said the plan is a set of ordinances to help fund the Team Jonesboro initiative. Quote, there is something that is long overdue. If we're going to keep our brightest minds, I already read that quote. One of the ordinance proposed would put a 1% sales tax before voters of Jonesboro that would help fund investments in public safety, along with constructing amenities for the public, such as parks, which we'll have to fund forever, aquatic centers, which we'll have to fund forever, meaning infrastructure, a shooting sports complex, arts and entertainment venues, museums, sidewalks, trail systems, other projects, and a partridge in a pear tree. The group states that the sales tax rate in Jonesboro is among the lowest in the state. They go on to say the proposed tax would sunset in 12 years and raise an estimated $18 million a year to be divided equally between public safety and quality of life amenities. So are we going to see police officer? I was in Jonesboro 10 years ago where they did this very same thing. Are we going to see policemen and firemen on the city, on the intersections again, holding up signs like, please help me keep my job? Are we really going to go with the pain point politics again this time? Is that what's going to happen here? Jonesboro Fire Chief said currently first responders are struggling to keep up with the growth that the city has experienced. Well, you know what you do when the city grows, right? You raise the taxes on people. Yeah, you got more people coming. You got more people buying, which actually means your revenue is increasing. You don't have to raise sales tax to get more revenue. Revenue is increasing because you have more people moving here. You have more people engaging in commerce, more people buying homes, more people paying property tax. See, that's the way it's supposed to go. Your revenue increases as the people come, and you need to work within that budget and not try to raise the tax more and more just because somebody else. We should be proud. I mean, people of Northeast Arkansas, people of Jonesboro should be proud that they have one of the lowest sales taxes locally in the state of Arkansas. Anyway, can you believe this? We're going to take a break, going to reset, and we're going to get to our meme of the day, which is applicable here. Oh, by the way, I just want to say this one more thing, one more time, rather. George Washington Plunkett. Let me explain. My party's in power in the city. It's going to undertake a lot of public improvements. Well, I'm tipped off. Say they're going to lay out a new park at a certain place. I see my opportunity. I take it. I go to that place. I buy up all the land I can in the neighborhood. Then the board of this or that makes its plan public, and there's a rush to get my land, which nobody cared particular for before. I don't know if that's going on in this case, but I'm just telling you, it certainly was attempted to go on in Fort Smith. Who knows? Who knows what happens? When the wheels of government turn and tax other people, spend other people's money, somebody's going to benefit from it. Break the wheel. We got to take a break. Back in a minute.
Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, Policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Republicans. So speak to that. How is that dynamic working in Texas and going forward? How's that going to work if the Republican Party platform's not being implemented? You know, what happens then?
Right. Well, that's a great question. So, Texas has had basically no Democrat has been elected statewide in Texas since 1994. Republicans took the Texas House in 2002. They took the Texas Senate a few after, and we've had over a decade of unified Republican control. But despite that, repeatedly you have seen conservative priorities die on the vine. This session, the Texas GOP had 5 legislative priorities chosen by delegates at last summer's convention, where we have the largest political convention with voting delegates in the world, with almost 9,000 people voting on what the
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Eight 870-275-9799 is the telephone number if you would like to contribute to the conversation today. As we are running out of time, we will get to the meme of the day, and of course, I think this is applicable. Meme of the day, Joe, go. When you have to get ready for work so the government can steal half of what you earn. So we have a cartoon here of a man in the bed here, crying, rolling over, looking at a picture or alarm clock. But it looks like he's looking at a photo. But anyway, you wake up. I don't know if any of you do this, but probably not a lot of us. Hopefully when you wake up, you every morning you have more of a prayerful heart and spirit. But sometimes you wake up and you're getting ready for work so the government can still have what you earn. I mean, at some point, is there any point in getting out of the bed? Socialism. I saw another meme. Hang on, let me read you this other one. Speaking of memes, we got to do this real quick because I thought it was good. Mini AOC. So at Mini AOC official. So this is a Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez parody account. Socialism is so amazing. My brothers and sisters do all the chores and I get half their allowance. Update. My brothers and sisters stopped doing the chores and now there's no allowance to take half of. Update. I'm plotting a coup to overthrow my parents. Yes. I think that's definitely applicable as well. If you have a meme of the day, we'll tweet this out and we'll tweet this one out and we'll put it on the Facebook page and feel free to comment and share. But if you have a meme of the day that you guys want to submit to Conduit News, you can text that number 870-275-9799 or feel free to add other memes when we post these out here in just a minute in the comment section. And if we like one of them, we'll maybe share it with the statewide radio audience and the online digital platforms. So feel free to do that. Tomorrow is Johnny Cash Friday. You can also give me your request if you would like, and we really appreciate it. It's good to be back. I know I've been gone. Please, thank you for giving me some grace and bearing with me as I took the vacation. I appreciate Josh Waters for hosting and Jan Morgan for hosting while I was gone. I really appreciate it, and I've heard great things about it. And we'll be back here with bells on tomorrow morning for Johnny Cash Friday. We'll be covering the news and events of the day and the week, anything that fell through the cracks. Arkansas, thanks for listening. Be safe.